Good evening and welcome to City of Glendale's meeting of the Civil Service Commission for September 11, 2013. Before we begin, I would be remiss if I did not reflect for a moment and ask everyone to reflect about the loss that we suffered 12 years ago, the victims, the men and women, young and old, of 9/11, New York City, New York. I would like us to stand for a moment and acknowledge the sacrifices made by the fine men and women of the New York City Police Department, the fine men and women of the New York City Fire Department, the fine men and women of the New York City Port Authority, and all of the citizens of New York who endured, suffered, survived, persevered, and stood as one, as United States citizens of the United States of America always do. For a moment of silence, please stand. Thank you very much. We may begin with the agenda.
Roll call. Commissioner Yakubian?
Present.
Commissioner Devine?
Here.
Commissioner Hatamian?
Here.
Chair Kazarian?
Here.
And for the record, Commissioner Manukian is absent.
Next item, please.
Minutes.
Before we ask for a vote, may I bring to the Commission's attention a couple of items on this?
Certainly.
On the minutes. I reviewed the minutes, and I have a question with respect to item number 7. Item number 7, as it appears on page 2 at the top, the last portion of item number 7, it reads, by suggestion of the City Attorney Michael Garcia, the Commission agreed to receive answers to their proposed questions in writing from the City Attorney's Office. I seem to recall Mr. Garcia at one point, at least during the dialogue, indicated that they would not be providing us with opinion-type memoranda. But then at another point, I seem to recall something consistent with what the minutes reflect. So with that, I ask whether or not these minutes and this reference is accurate, or is it misleading to me at least, or confusing?
Okay, Mr. Chair, I can comment on that, or if Ms. Varpetian. It was a long discussion,
right.
Encapsulated in about 3 sentences. So, but my recollection was that there were many questions by the Commission, and I think at one point Mr. Garcia began, the process of trying to answer them, and then recommended that instead, that his office, utilizing possibly our outside counsel that we use for our labor negotiations, receive questions and try to respond to them to the Commission at a future date. And I do recall at one point him asking that they be written, but I'm not sure that's how the meeting concluded. But what I do know is that Mr. Garcia is working with our outside counsel on labor relations to essentially prepare a report on the issue addressing the question.
So it is taking place.
It is taking place.
Okay. If it is taking place, then the reference is appropriate to be left in the minutes. If, on the other hand, if I was about to be hearing that no such thing is happening from Ms. Varpetian, who works in the office, obviously, then I would say perhaps we ought to eliminate this. But I'm satisfied that with what you've represented, that it should remain in the minutes. I have...
Sir, we will likely be back with you on that at our next meeting on September the 28th, I believe it is.
25th.
25th.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay. I have a couple of other comments. One related to item number 11, the item Civil Service Commission staff comments. It references an utterance or a statement by me in the last sentence wherein it states, Chair Kazarian also addressed an incident with the police department's front door during non-business hours. I'd ask kindly that we clarify that. Actually, that incident, as I referenced it, as I recall, was during business hours. That was my concern, that it was 5 minutes before 7 o'clock, and then 4 minutes before 7 o'clock as I walked up to the stairs to the front door. And in fact, it was before 7 o'clock when I attempted to send a text to Glendale police personnel in the fourth floor. And I did speak about my preference and my call and wish that doors to remain open for the public on a 24-hour basis. That's correct. So in that instance, that reference is correct, that, my preference is to have the doors open during non-current business hours. But my desire to be heard or make a comment was born out of an experience I had when I had gone to the police station before the 7 p.m. hour.
Chair Gazarian, if I may, would it be appropriate if the sentence instead read, Chair Gazarian also addressed an incident with the police department's front door during business hours where the door was locked?
That would be appropriate for me. Yes, that would be sufficient. Thank you. And lastly, on the item number 13, the adjournment section, we seem to reference Commissioner Yakubian having made a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:44 p.m. I think that was perhaps 7:44 p.m. because I recall the meeting was adjourned. Now, unless this is the ultimate adjournment after a closed session, because that meeting, the meeting adjourned, the open session, then some commissioners, not myself because I had recused myself, convened a closed session, and perhaps thereafter we came and perhaps thereafter, well, actually not perhaps, I know for a fact, thereafter we came and reported out. And maybe that reporting out was at 8:44, but I don't know that that's accurate because in the following page of the handout that was provided to us, which refers to August 28th City Council chambers, I don't know if this is referring to a 9:06 p.m. adjournment. And if that is correct, I know that my fellow commissioners deliberated for quite a bit longer than 22 minutes. So the 8:44 p.m. adjournment of an open session called for by Commissioner Yakubian and a subsequent 9:06 p.m. adjournment, which is the ultimate overall end of the evening adjournment after a closed session, could not have been in that setting. It was not 10:06 p.m., so that 9:06 p.m. is correct. Right. I believe that the 8:44 p.m. was 7:44 p.m. If you can check and thereafter, I'm okay pending that.
Chair Gazarian, I have in my notes that we adjourned to closed session at 7:12 p.m., but I did not note.
Closed session?
We adjourned to the first closed session at 7:12 p.m., but I don't have when we reported out of closed session.
I know for a fact we deliberated for over an hour.
Mr. Chair, I believe Ms. Kasparian indicated that the adjournment of the regular meeting, she believes, was 7:44.
That's my recollection.
The 9:06, of course, refers to after the adjournment of the reporting out following the special meeting, which was handled separately.
And in fact, if I may, I think there's another correction that needs to be made. The special meeting minutes need not be a part of this commission's record because that was a special meeting of the hearing officers and not the commission. So as a result, this commission should not take action on that.
And my name should perhaps be removed because I was not part of that process.
The special meeting?
That's correct. Isn't that the closed session of deliberations of the matter?
The special meeting, correct.
Yes, I was not part of that.
So I think what you're looking for is for the minutes to be amended as it relates to the regular meeting to state that at item 13, that the motion to adjourn the meeting was at 7:44 p.m.
That's correct.
Okay,
minutes.
And we can verify that. I have my notes. I can verify that.
And if we need to, and if what we're stating here is incorrect, then we'll bring it back.
That's fine.
Mr. Chair, my recollection is coming back. There were two closed session items, one very long one, and then which we reported out, and then a very brief one involving a hearing merely scheduling dates, which took about 20 minutes.
Okay.
That could
But
indicate that the 844 and
The
906 might in fact be.
okay, let me give you the chronology as I recall it, Mr. Doyle.
We have to be careful what we say too.
No, I
Closed
understand.
session.
We had an open meeting. I elicited a suggestion that perhaps we should continue a matter that was going to take a long time. That did not seem to be met with a consensus, so we heard the matter. That was an open matter, and that matter caused our initial session, an open session, to run almost 7:45. I recall that specifically. I recall that specifically because when we broke, there were two closed items, and rather than taking the short item first, the longer item was taken, and I stayed outside in the open area between here and the other building for over an hour, literally. And I remember having many conversations and talking about this is taking, this is now going on an hour, this is now more than an hour, and eventually we returned. So if we returned, we may have very well returned at 8:44 p.m. to perhaps report out on that first closed item, perhaps, but then we went into a second closed item, or we reported out ultimately on the second closed item, or reported out in the open at 9:06 p.m. Whatever the case may be, the initial segment, and there were 3 segments that evening, the initial segment took us close to 8 o'clock, but not quite. Then there was a break of an hour plus while my fellow commissioners deliberated on another matter, and then we returned for a third session that I also took part in that was short enough, that was about 20-some-odd minutes. So,
Mr. Chair, I always make a note of the time where we start an item. I've always believed it to be a futile exercise, and yet I've done it for years. What you're referring to is the order in which we did it. We started with item 1, 2, 3, 4, and then went to item number 7, which is the report on the assignment of the GPOA disciplinary action to outside hearing officers. That began at 5:20 p.m. And then we went to item 5, eligible list established, and that began at 6:30 p.m. Then we went to item 6, which was at 6:30, item 8 at 6:56, item 9 at 7:05, item 10 at 7:06, 11 at 7:07, and then we adjourned to closed session at 7:12 p.m.
the open session.
To closed session, we
We adjourned to closed session.
closed
Okay.
session, and that was the public employee discipline deliberations.
Right.
And so what you're stating is that the commission deliberated for over an hour, would have began at 7:12.
They didn't bring in at 7:12.
Well, we adjourned into closed session at 7:12. I can't recall if there was a break or not, but it would have.
There was a break.
Then it
I
would
saw
have.
people walk out and then return.
Then it
for
would
further
have started
deliberations.
immediately thereafter. And so then the deliberations took place. And then we reported out on that item.
I don't want to nitpick here, but when it says adjournment, no further business to come before the commissioner. Commissioner Yacubia made a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:44 p.m. What meeting was that?
That would have been the regular meeting of August 28th. You're thinking of the second item, which is a special meeting of the hearing officers and not the commission.
Oh, okay. So 8:44 is after the closed session.
Yes.
Correct.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Okay. That's fine. Yes. That's fine. Yeah.
We never adjourned. We never adjourned when we broke into closed session, and we came back, we
Right.
reported out.
Okay. Because I was under the mistaken belief that this 8:44 reflects adjourning and then commissioners going into that second section of our 3-section evening.
No.
Okay. No, I'm fine. I apologize.
Having made the motion, I remember that we came back, we announced the decision, and then we adjourned.
Okay, my issue is not with you having made motion, Commissioner Yakubian. It's just, I know that the open session was over way before 8:44 because you guys had to go to the closed session. So if you came back at 8:44, that would make sense, yes.
May I make a motion to sets of minutes, changes? I'm sorry, the one set of minutes with the change.
I second that motion wholeheartedly.
Can he second the motion since he wasn't here in the outset?
Oh, okay, never mind. Please second the motion.
I'm just asking.
Please.
He
On the
can.
first,
Okay, I'm just asking.
On the first one, he can.
Okay, I'm just asking.
I think we have unanimous consent.
We do.
On to the next item.
Oral communications.
I see no cards, so I'd ask for the next item, please.
Recruitment and examination report.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this item is a note and file. It just is an indication of our recruitment and examination workload at the current time. As you can see, these are categorized by the staff member who are working on each of these recruitments. These are the recruitments that are at various stages of the process. And you can see we have some activity on the police chief recruitment and others. Another big one going on right now is firefighter recruit, which is where several of my staff members are right now, testing over 3,000 candidates for that position. And just a variety of other relatively busy activity here in the recruitment area. So if you have questions, I'd be happy to try and answer those for you. Otherwise, this is note and file.
Any questions? Seeing none, next item, please.
Eligible list established.
Mr. Doyle?
Once again, Mr. Chair, this is represents the eligible lists that have been established since our last meeting. As you can see, there are two. One was promotional, the other open. The promotional exams, as you know, are limited to city employees versus the open examinations are open to anyone in the labor pool who's qualified. Again, both of these examination processes ensued since our last meeting, and as you can see, we provide you with the number of applications, and then ultimately, once the testing process finishes up, we end up with an eligibility list containing the number of names that are eligible to be hired at that point. With that, again, this is a note and file. If you have questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Any questions? Seeing none, next item, please.
Reports information.
Mr. Doyle? I see none.
I have none.
Next item, please.
Agenda forecast.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, the agenda forecast is attached. We have nothing significant on the agenda forecast, just the usual business that we would be having at our regular meetings. On September 25th, which is our next meeting, we do anticipate a closed session item to address the item that was started last week. Excuse me, that won't be a closed session item. That would be an open item relative to the discussion over the GPOA action on hearing officers. Other than that, as you know, we have one other hearing taking place in closed session.
When is that item coming up? I'm sorry.
Please.
When is that item on the GPOA coming up? Did you say the 9:25?
Commissioner Devine, we do anticipate having that ready on the meeting of September 25th. I see that you won't be here, so if it's the desire of the commission to postpone that, we could.
It is. I would like the full commission to be taking part. If we could ask that item be brought back on October 9th, and if I may inquire if my fellow commissioners all will be there on October 9th, will be here on October 9th?
Yeah, and also, could we get the city attorney's response before that date? So at least we've had a chance to...
Yeah, I was going to say that too. If there's a report that we need to review before the meeting, and the sooner we get it, the better.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily have to be before the October 9th or September 25th. Whenever it's ready, we'll start looking at it.
Very good.
We'll take that back to the office. We'll get that to you as soon as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does that conclude your report, Mr. Dua?
Yes.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Civil Service Commission staff comments.
Any comments, fellow commissioners? Hearing none. Next item, please.
Closed session, public employee discipline deliberations.
Well, this is when I have to lean to my left, and is this when we go off the video?
Yeah, we are going off camera now. We don't anticipate having anything to report out today. So this will conclude the open session, and we will now go into closed session.
Very well. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.